Aurora HDR 2019 has just dropped. It's some cool new software. I'm going to be putting it to the test in this video, because if your pictures look like this, but you'd like them to look more like this, stick around. Hi, Paul here from Photogenius. Now recently Skylum Software got in touch with me asking me if I would like to put their latest HDR photography editing software to the test. Aurora HDR, it's been around for a little while, I was totally aware of it, and it's quite a big deal actually, because about a year ago it won, or Apple awarded it, the App of the Year. So it's a pretty decent bit of software, and it's had a complete rebuild. So they've just launched Aurora HDR 2019. I've only had it for a short while, and in this video I want to show you what it can do. Now for 2019, the software now comes with a whole bunch of brand new features, but I'm going to assume that for this video you've never used the software before, because that was me. I hadn't used the software before, so as good as the new features might be, I'm approaching this as a brand new user, and in this video I'm going to show you how I approached an edit. I think HDR now deserves an explanation. What is HDR photography? HDR stands for High Dynamic Range Photography, and basically is a technique where we take or try and create an image that has a high dynamic range, details in the bright areas of the image, details in the shadow areas, as well as the mid-tones. Very difficult to achieve in a single exposure, so HDR involves taking multiple images, usually 3 exposures, and merging them together. I think I could probably explain HDR a bit better actually. Let's go somewhere else. Now we're in another part of the office, because this room is ideal for me to demonstrate to you guys what I mean by high contrast scenes and wide dynamic range. I'm hoping that you can see me fairly well, at least you should do, because I've set the camera up to expose for me and the light falling on me in this space. But as you can see, the background behind me is completely overexposed. Now this is what I mean by a high contrast scene. There's a huge contrast, a huge difference between the light in this space, in this room, and what is going on outside, and the camera can't cope. What's interesting is if you were standing where this camera is right now, you would be able to see me and what's outside these windows at the same time, no problem at all. We humans, we are amazing. But when we take a picture, sometimes, well actually most of the time, we expect to see in our picture what we see with our eyes. But this can sometimes be a problem. HDR photography is here to help solve that problem. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to adjust the exposure on this camera. I'm going to increase the shutter speed a little bit so we let less light in the camera. Effectively I'm going to be underexposing. So I'm increasing the shutter speed, letting less light into the camera, and you will see now that there are some trees behind me. Now you couldn't see these a moment ago. So what I've done is I've let less light into the camera. This has brought the exposure levels down. This is good for the bright areas of this scene, but at a price, and that is I'm now becoming darker. I'm going to increase the shutter speed again, and you'll now see that as well as trees, we have got a lovely blue sky. It's a beautiful day here in Brisbane, and there's a lovely blue sky up there, but you couldn't see it a moment ago, but now you can, because I'm underexposing. So underexposure will retain the highlight detail, mid-tones, and overexposing will bring out the shadow areas. That is what HDR photography is all about. So let's open up Aurora HDR 2019, and we're going to begin by opening image. So we click on open image here, select our 3 images that we want to merge into a single HDR, and click on open. And the first thing we see are some little thumbnails here. These are our 3 images. Middle exposure here, over to the left is our underexposed image, and over to the right is our overexposed image. Click on create HDR, and the software will begin to merge these images into one single HDR image. This will take a few seconds. So here's our image, and wow, already it looks pretty amazing. To give you an idea, if you go up to the button at the top that has an eye symbol on it, here you can show the original image, unclick, and it shows the HDR version. So you can see from the starting image to here, there is already a big improvement. Now, our main image is displayed in the middle of the screen. Along the bottom, you'll find some what are called looks. These are basically pre-made looks that have been created for you. If you click on any one of these, the look will be applied. Think of them a bit like filters that you might use in Instagram. Some of them are pretty cool, to be honest, and some maybe not so cool, but it's nice to have different options. Now I want to do the editing myself rather than use one of the looks, so I'm going to click over to the left on neutral, and I'm actually going to remove this panel along the bottom screen. So if I go up to the right here and click on this icon, I can get rid of the looks panel. And we're going to start by taking a look at the screen top left. There's a minus plus button. This allows you to increase or decrease the size of your image. The eye symbol we've looked at already. This is the preview button, so you can preview or go back and check out the original starting image. Next to that on the right is the compare option, which I particularly like. Click on this, drag the bar backwards and forwards, and you can slide between the original starting image and the edit. I think that's a pretty nice feature of this software, so I'm going to click on that to turn that off. Next is the undo button here. Click on this and it will undo the last change that you've made to the image. Obviously we haven't done anything ourselves yet, so clicking on this would currently do nothing. Clicking on the button next door is the history button. This shows you history or past edits. Again, we've made no real changes as yet, so we're going to move on to the next one, which is crop, which does exactly what it says. Allows you, if you want, to crop or resize the image. So you just move around. There are several preset aspect ratios that you can choose. If you want a square crop, you just click on 1:1, and there you go. Hit return on the keyboard will apply the crop. Now I don't want to crop this image, so if I click on the undo button, as it says, it undoes the last edit. Now over to the right, next to the side panel tab, which allows you to remove the side panel if you wish. Now we don't want to, because we're going to start using this right now. And if you're a user of Lightroom, you may already notice that this does bear a bit of a resemblance to Lightroom and some of the other software that is out there. Basically a panel of options that we can adjust, including things like brightness, exposure, sharpness, HDR enhanced. Now, having only had this software for a few days, I haven't had a chance to try every feature, but I'm going to do a basic edit to this image and I'm going to take you through some of the changes that I like. So we're going to skip some of the options, concentrate on the ones that I think are most important. Now, HDR Basic allows you to change things like white balance just by sliding the sliders backwards and forwards. I don't want to change the white balance, and I'm happy with the general exposure, so I don't want to underexpose my image or make my image any brighter. So I'm going to skip HDR Basic. I'm also quite happy with the colors, so I'm going to skip the color section. But I am going to have a little play with the HDR Enhance, because this will allow me to enhance the HDR effect if I want, or equally knock it back a little bit. Now I'm going to go straight to HDR Smart Structure. This is a nice feature and allows you to reveal and bring out detail and enhance textures. So I'm going to slide the slider up and notice the big change in the water here. Next to the words HDR Enhance is a little eye button. If you click on it, it will turn this feature off and back on again, so you can switch between and see the difference it's making. It's really enhancing the detail, particularly on the rocks here, the waves, and also the roofs on the buildings. If I zoom in by clicking on the image and turn HDR Enhance off, you'll see how the roofs of the building and the clouds do soften up. So I'm going to click that again to turn it on, zoom back out, and I'm quite happy with that so far. Next, I'm going to go down to softness. Now, softness does what it says. It can soften the image. Now, I don't want the HDR effect to be too much, so I'm going to add a little bit of softness, and I found that about 24 tends for me to be about the magic number. Now, let's take a look at denoise. If we zoom in on the sky here, you'll notice that there is some digital noise in the image. Increasing the amount will soften the image. So you'll see the noise, digital noise in the sky will disappear. So HDR denoise amount, about 50 to maybe 60, I think works quite well. Now below that we find LUT mapping. Now I'm not using LUTs or looks, so I'm moving on now to image radiance, which can be used to add a soft glow to the image. This is quite popular with a lot of HDR photography. Not something I want to do to this image, but if I increase it, you'll see exactly what I mean. Click on it and you'll see that the image now takes on a slightly dreamy look. So quite a lot softer, still some detail, not a bad look to be honest, but it's not what I want for this image. So I'm going to double click on the slider, which takes it back to its starting position. Moving on to polarizing filter. If you've ever used a polarizing filter, you'll know that it will enhance blue skies, green grass, make trees look more lush looking. Polarizing filter here is an effect which will give you that type of look. So if you increase, it will in particular boost the blues in the image. Clearly that's a bit over the top, but I think just a touch of the polarizing effect is quite nice. I'm just going to increase that to just 12. Again, if I click on the eye icon, I can get rid of it and compare the results. So quite a subtle effect. Maybe just bump it up a tiny bit more, 14. There you go. I think it looks quite nice. And let's now go down to HDR details boost. So details boost relates to the details in the image. And I'm going to go to the medium slider here and increase this to 61. Now if we toggle backwards and forwards, again it's quite a subtle effect, but you'll see probably most noticeable on the waves here how this has sharpened and revealed more detail. So I really like that one. Now adjustable gradient can emulate the effect and the look of using a graduated ND filter when taking the photo. You can affect the top of the image or the bottom. I'll show you what it does. If I click on top and go to exposure and bring it down, it will make the top part of the image darker. If I click on set orientation, this allows me to move the effect up or down the image. If I put it at the top, what it will do is it will just darken the top of the frame. And again, clicking on the eye icon here allows us to see a bit a before and after version. Now I quite like a bit of this, so we're going to go with that. I'm going to skip tone curve and move on to HSL. HSL allows you to change your hue, saturation and luminance, but just of certain colors. Now there's a lot of blue in this image, so to show you what it does, if I go to the blue slider and slide it down, it will reduce the, here in this case, the saturation of the blues in the image, but still leave the other colors alone. If I increase the blue, it's going to boost the blues. It won't touch the yellows, it won't touch the greens, it won't touch the reds, it would just affect the blue. Now, I don't really want to change this, I just wanted to show you what it does. So I'm going to double click on the slider and it presets or goes back to the middle. Color toning, I'm going to skip for now. I want to move on to dodge and burn. Now, dodge and burn is a technique used by photographers in the darkroom when processing film. So a bit of an old-fashioned term, but it's pretty useful. Here, if I click on start painting, my cursor becomes like a paintbrush. If I move over to the bottom of the boat here and just slide backwards and forwards, what I can do is make the bottom of the boat brighter. I can knock the effect back using the slider if I want, because I think that's just a bit too bright. There you go. I think that looks pretty good. And again, clicking on the little eye icon here allows me to toggle between before and after. So that's dodge and burn. You can use this to make areas darker as well. Now I'm not going to worry about vignettes. I'm pretty happy with what I've done. So I've just taken you through some of the key features of the software. Again, if we click on the compare button at the top, we can slide backwards and forwards and look at our original starting image before it was turned into an HDR image. Here's our edits so far. And I think this looks pretty amazing. So I'm new to Aurora, but so far I've been really impressed. I'm looking forward to using this software in the future. Hope you enjoyed this demonstration. Now, a big thank you to Skylum Software for asking me or inviting me to put their software to the test. They didn't pay me to make this video. This isn't sponsored by them. Sure, they sent me the software, but that's about it. The video is all my own opinion. And look, I've been using it. I like it, and I think it's going to become a part of my workflow. So if you're interested in finding more about Aurora 2019, you'll find a link below the video. Now, if you're more interested in how you actually take those 3 exposures, I'm going to do a separate video on this. I'll put a link up here for you. If you've enjoyed this video, you know what to do by now. Give us a thumbs up, consider subscribing to my channel, and you can leave your comments and suggestions down below. I hope to see you sometime soon. See ya. And I'm going to be testing Aurora. I'm going to be testing Aurora. And the software I'm going to be using is Aurora HDR 2019. Yes!